Ryan Callahan's first conscious thought was that he'd woken up in a nightmare with excellent lighting. The walls of the chamber glimmered faintly violet, shifting colors like the inside of a soap bubble, and every surface hummed softly, a vibration that tickled the back of his skull. He blinked once, twice, wondering if someone had spiked his rations with hallucinogens, only to realize his stomach was grumbling normally, which meant, horrifyingly, that this wasn't a dream. His hands were free, the chains he expected nowhere in sight, yet the air felt charged, as if every molecule was conspiring to remind him he wasn't on any Earth he knew. The first person Ryan noticed wasn't the alien guards or the hovering drones that hummed overhead like disgruntled bees. It was her. Selara. She stepped from the shadows with a measured grace, her long ears flicking slightly, twitching like antennae catching signals he couldn't comprehend. She looked human at first glance. Tall, strong, elegant in a way that made military dress codes feel petty and absurd. But the ears, oh, those ears, were like delicate blades of moonlight, tapering and expressive, and they moved as though they had their own language. Ryan immediately decided she probably knew everything he thought about her, and that he didn't want to test the theory. "Lieutenant Callahan," she said, her voice smooth, a perfect mixture of command and amusement. "You are awake." "Excellent. I was concerned that you might be permanently impressed by the Daker." Her words floated in the chamber as if each one had its own weight, and Ryan had the urge to salute just to avoid looking foolish. Instead, he managed a crooked smile and a joke he immediately regretted. "Decent lighting," he said. "Wouldn't want to blind the prisoners before dinner." Selara's eyes narrowed just enough that he suspected he had failed, or succeeded, depending on whether she liked sarcasm or wanted him dead. "You amuse me," she said, tilting her head. Her ears twitched upward like a cat listening for secrets. "That is unexpected." Ryan's stomach clenched. He had been told stories of alien conquerors, of human war prizes turned into exhibits or worse, but Selara was doing something new. She wasn't scaring him into submission, she was observing him. Curious, amused, unjudging, at least outwardly. And Ryan had the distinct, terrifying impression that she found the concept of fear inconvenient. She gestured with one hand, long fingers that could have been sculpted from glass, and the walls shimmered, panels sliding silently to reveal a circular chamber with floating platforms. "You will remain here until you understand the rules of conduct aboard Sovereign Eclipse," she said. "But first, breakfast." Ryan's internal alarm bells were blaring. Breakfast, on a starship in alien hands. Probably acid-laced protein paste shaped like cubes, he thought. Or worse, something that would start talking to him in galactic basic. But what arrived was not unpleasant. A tray of iridescent fruits, glowing faintly in tones that changed with their ripeness, and a cup of liquid that pulsed with a soft lavender glow. It smelled faintly like vanilla and ozone, which Ryan decided was a good sign. He took a sip and realized it tasted like almond milk, except it had a pleasant fizz that tickled the tongue. "Do you always feed your war prizes like this?" he asked cautiously, poking a fruit with a finger. Selara's lips quirked upward. "I do not have war prizes. I have companions." Her words, delivered like a casual aside, made Ryan snort, then cough, because laughing while trying not to choke in zero gravity is an underrated form of punishment. "Lieutenant," she said, "do you intend to behave, or will you continue demonstrating the human obsession with exaggeration?" He swallowed, forcing a grin. "Companions, huh? Guess that makes me the awkward, sarcastic one." Her eyes sparkled, a hint of gold at the rim. "Perhaps, but you have charm. It is inconvenient." Her ears flicked up and down, a gesture Ryan would come to learn was her version of amusement mixed with mild irritation. "You will remain under observation. I insist you learn the proper protocol for dining, speaking, and breathing." Ryan considered pointing out that breathing had never been optional on his watch, but he decided against it. Instead, he nodded and decided to make the best of a bad situation. He had to survive, and sarcasm had always been his armor. Over the next hours, Ryan learned that the chamber wasn't just a room. It was alive. Panels shifted to create obstacles and platforms, sometimes offering a challenge, sometimes a lecture. Solara explained the rules as if they were obvious, like reminding someone to tie their shoes, but the rules themselves involved zero-gravity etiquette, quantum etiquette, and an alien form of respect that included bowing in a way that defied the laws of physics. Ryan fell, rolled, and stumbled more than once, each time eliciting a quiet snicker from Solara, her ears twitching with delight. "You are hopeless," she said at one point, as Ryan floated upside down, arms flailing, attempting what she called the ceremony of acknowledgement. And yet not without merit. He laughed despite himself. "Thanks, I think." Later, while floating on a platform high above the chamber floor, Ryan noticed the small things about her. The way her eyes caught the ambient light, the faint movement in her ears when she listened to the hum of the ship, the almost imperceptible twitch of her lips when something amused her. There was something genuinely human in her, beyond the title of Alien Queen and the terrifying aura that had filled every story he'd ever heard. Something that suggested she was capable of humor, curiosity, and, if he dared hope, connection. By the time the day ended, Ryan was exhausted but oddly exhilarated. He had survived his first meals, first ceremonies, and first lessons in interstellar etiquette, all while managing not to offend Solara too gravely. As he settled into the gravity-adjusted resting platform, he realized that despite being her captive, or companion, he wasn't afraid. Not entirely. There was curiosity there too, a cautious wonder about what this alien queen with the twitching long ears might do next, and a faint, unspoken acknowledgement that perhaps the galaxy was full of surprises far stranger than war and death. Ryan closed his eyes, letting the soft hum of the ship lull him into a fitful rest, thinking about the absurdity of it all. The conquered soldier, the alien queen, the floating fruits that glimmered like stars in his hand. Somewhere deep in his chest, a tiny spark of amusement, maybe even hope, flickered to life. And somewhere in the distance, Solara's ears twitched, catching the faint sound of him snoring and deciding quietly that he was interesting. Ryan woke to the hum of the sovereign eclipse shifting through subspace, a vibration that tickled his teeth more than it should have, and the faint glow of violet panels bathing the chamber like a perpetual sunrise. He rolled onto his back, reaching for the gravity stabilizer that kept his limbs from drifting into the ceiling, and realized he had a new problem. Solara was standing at the edge of the platform, arms folded, watching him like he was some sort of live experiment rather than a man who had been, until yesterday, convinced he'd never survive an alien fleet. "Morning, Lieutenant," she said. Her long ears flicked once, sharply, catching the hum of the ship and whatever subtle energy shifts passed unnoticed to humans. "You slept, acceptably." She paused, lips twitching just enough to suggest amusement. "Though your snoring is remarkable in its persistence." Ryan rubbed the sleep out of his eyes. "Thanks. I train for excellence in all things, including nasal acoustics." Solara arched an eyebrow, one of those motions that seemed so delicate it could have broken glass, but the twitch of her ears betrayed her enjoyment. "You will come with me. The day is scheduled, and you are included whether you like it or not." He groaned, trying to swing his legs off the platform without accidentally floating into orbit. "Does the schedule include surviving your breakfast experiments again?" "Survival is optional," she replied, ignoring the sarcasm. "Engagement is mandatory." Her voice had that curious effect of being both command and playful tease, a combination that left Ryan simultaneously alert and oddly entertained. The chamber's panels shifted as they walked, creating corridors lined with glowing tendrils of bioluminescent flora, their gentle undulations like slow waves in a coral reef. Ryan dodged a vine that flicked him in the face, muttering, "I feel like a kid in a zero-gravity jungle gym." Solara's lips twitched. "You are learning." "Barely," Ryan muttered, brushing off the foliage. I was an expert in war, not interstellar horticultural obstacle courses. The two arrived at what Ryan guessed was a control chamber, though it resembled an alien art installation more than a bridge. Holographic displays hovered midair, projecting maps of star systems he'd never heard of, each planet marked with tiny flickering symbols. Drones zipped overhead, scanning, recording, occasionally bumping into each other, and producing a soft beep that sounded like a bleeping chorus. "This is your new classroom," Selara said, sweeping a hand over the holograms. "Today, you will learn navigation, diplomacy, and proper etiquette for interspecies negotiation." Ryan's eyes widened. Proper etiquette. I thought surviving your weird breakfast ceremonies was enough diplomacy for a lifetime. Selara didn't flinch. Life aboard Sovereign Eclipse is long, and your survival will require more than meals and floating. She tilted her head, ears flicking as though catching a frequency only she could hear. "You will also need to learn patience, observation, and how not to insult me inadvertently in front of the entire crew." Hint, I'm already failing the last one, Ryan said. Selara smirked. Correct and amusing. Hours passed in a rhythm of lessons and mishaps. Ryan was introduced to star charts that rotated in impossible ways, requiring him to manipulate them midair with gestures that sometimes resulted in him spinning uncontrollably or slamming into holographic walls. He tried negotiating with a group of sentient maintenance drones, which turned out to be stubbornly literal-minded and prone to humor of their own. At one point, one drone insisted that Ryan repeat every phrase in binary before it would allow him to operate a control panel, which he did while muttering sarcastic commentary under his breath. Selara's ears twitched with each jab, and she laughed softly when he finally exhaled in frustration. "You are persistent," she said. "Annoying occasionally, but persistent. It is a rare trait among humans." Ryan, mid-float, spun and saluted with a mock-heroic flourish. "I aim to please or at least to confuse." By midday, Ryan had accidentally activated a holographic simulation that made the control chamber appear as if it were raining miniature starships. He ducked, swatted at the tiny projections, and cursed under his breath when a particularly aggressive starfighter buzzed his ear. Selara simply watched, ears twitching like twin sensors, until he finally paused, exhausted. "You have potential," she said, "for a human." "Thanks," Ryan said, panting. "I'll take that as a compliment, I think." Lunch, or whatever approximated lunch, was served in the zero-gravity dining hall. Gravity shifted periodically, so Ryan learned quickly that food would float, liquid would form perfectly spherical orbs, and utensils had a mind of their own. He spent most of the meal chasing a glowing sphere of soup while Selara observed, clearly amused, her long ears flicking rhythmically like she was keeping time with some internal music. "Have you ever considered," she said casually, "that humor is a survival mechanism?" Ryan caught the soup mid-flight and raised an eyebrow. "You're telling me now, after the floating fruit fiasco?" "You learn better under pressure," she replied, and with laughter. Her ears twitched again, and Ryan noted that despite being a queen, she seemed almost human in these tiny gestures, in the way she tolerated chaos with grace and amusement. Afternoon lessons included weapon familiarization with plasma rifles designed for zero-gravity combat, alien history lectures delivered via immersive holovisions, and a brief but memorable lesson in etiquette, which involved bowing in 3 dimensions simultaneously. Ryan failed spectacularly, managing only 1 dimension at a time, and collided with a hovering chair that had a mind of its own. Selara's restrained chuckle echoed in the chamber, her long ears flicking as though she was monitoring his emotional state. By the time Ryan returned to his resting platform, he was soaked in sweat, trembling from laughter and exertion. Selara appeared beside him again, sitting on a hovering support beam, watching him carefully. "You survive," she said. "And a moose, that combination is rare." Ryan exhaled, floating onto his platform and letting the gravity stabilizer pull him down gently. "I'm beginning to think I might like this ship," he said, minus the potential for humiliation in every lesson. Adaptation is commendable, Solara replied. Her gaze lingered on him, long ears swaying lightly, and for a moment he thought he saw a flicker of something softer in her eyes. Perhaps one day you will even enjoy it. Ryan chuckled, though he knew it was unlikely. And yet, as he drifted toward a reluctant sleep, he realized he was no longer entirely certain who was teaching whom. The lessons, the laughter, and even the absurd challenges of zero-gravity life aboard the Sovereign Eclipse had begun to chip away at the barriers between conqueror and captive. Humor had become a bridge, and curiosity a tether. Somewhere in the distance, Solara's ears twitched again, attuned to his steady breathing. And Ryan, exhausted but oddly exhilarated, decided that surviving her lessons, and perhaps earning the smallest measure of her approval, might be the most entertaining mission of his life. The alarm blared through the corridors of the Sovereign Eclipse, a sound sharp enough to make Ryan's teeth chatter, though the vibration tickled more than it hurt. Solara's voice came over the intercom, calm and unnervingly precise. Lieutenant Callahan, it appears the day's schedule includes a battle. Do not panic, or do panic, it is quite effective entertainment for some. Ryan groaned, rolling out of the gravity-adjusted resting platform. I'm not sure which part of my training included this, he muttered, glancing at the floating console projecting the approaching fleet. Rival ships, sleek and deadly, shimmered like metallic hornets in the nebula haze. The Sovereign Eclipse had been cruising in stealth, but the opposition had tracked them. Now the test of survival was no longer theoretical. Solara appeared beside him, her long ears twitching as she scanned tactical readouts with almost casual ease. You will pilot a strike craft, she said. You will avoid destruction. You will assist in our victory. Humor is optional but recommended. Optional, Ryan snorted. I'd have thought panic was mandatory. She tilted her head, ears flicking sharply, a gesture he had learned to read as amusement mixed with disbelief. You have a unique approach to survival. Continue. Within moments, Ryan was strapped into the cockpit of a nimble fighter, its systems responsive to thought as well as touch. Solara's voice guided him through the comm link. Remember, coordination is key, and do not attempt to impress me with dramatic evasive maneuvers, though, if you succeed, it will be most amusing. He maneuvered through asteroid fields and bursts of enemy fire, dodging plasma streaks and homing projectiles, and realized something he hadn't felt in a long time: exhilaration without panic. His hands moved with precision, honed by months of combat and sharpened now by the urgency of protecting more than just himself. Humor surfaced spontaneously. I hope they like fireworks, he muttered, launching a flurry of decoy flares that sent an enemy ship spiraling off course. On the bridge, Solara watched, ears flicking as she coordinated her fleet, issuing orders in a rhythm that Ryan could only describe as a cross between music and war choreography. Remarkable, she said quietly. You anticipate better than I expected. Ryan grinned, narrowly avoiding a collision with a spinning debris field. I'll take that as a compliment from the Queen who claimed me as war spoils. You have grown, she replied. Her voice was calm but held a warmth that surprised him. Not just in skill, Lieutenant, but in adaptability. Hours blurred into a relentless dance of combat, strategy, and occasional comedic missteps. Ryan accidentally triggered a holographic decoy of himself that taunted enemy pilots, shouting sarcastic warnings like, "Watch out, I'm completely incompetent." The hologram worked better than he expected, confusing the opposition and earning a snort from Solara. Your irreverence is effective, she said, ears twitching in approval. Finally, the last enemy ship fell into the nebula, disabled but intact. Ryan floated in his fighter, exhausted but exhilarated, watching the remnants of the skirmish drift like sparkling confetti. A warning signal beeped gently, no longer urgent, just acknowledging that the immediate danger had passed. Solara appeared on the comm again, this time her voice soft, almost private. Lieutenant, your contribution was significant. And amusing as always. Ryan laughed quietly, leaning back in his seat. I guess that makes me your favorite war prize. You are more than that now, she said. There was a pause, and then carefully she added, I would like you to consider being my fiancé. Not as a formal gesture of conquest, but as acknowledgement of partnership. Ryan blinked, thinking about the absurdity and yet the sincerity of the moment. He considered the months aboard the ship, the lessons, the chaos, the floating fruits and stubborn drones, the subtle humor in her eyes and the twitch of her ears when she found something genuinely funny. He thought about how he had gone from captive to student to comrade, and now to something entirely unexpected, someone who mattered. He smirked, voice shaking slightly with relief and amusement. I suppose negotiation is allowed in zero gravity, so I'll accept, on the condition that breakfast is never optional again. Solara laughed softly, ears twitching in delight. Agreed. And I will ensure your meals are predictable, as much as is possible aboard a starship in interstellar travel. Later, they walked through the corridors, no formalities, just the quiet understanding of two people who had survived together, fought together, and laughed in the face of cosmic absurdity. The ship hummed around them, corridors glowing with shifting violet light, a galaxy of stars outside the viewport, and Ryan realized he was no longer a soldier defined by orders or conquest. He was a partner, a companion, and maybe, finally, someone capable of finding joy in even the strangest circumstances. Solara's hand brushed his lightly, a subtle contact, neither commanding nor timid, and Ryan felt a warmth that had nothing to do with proximity to alien technology. You are remarkable, Ryan, she said softly, in ways I did not anticipate, and I find that troubling in the best sense. He chuckled, trying to imagine any other scenario where he could have heard such a statement without laughing. Troubling, huh? I'll take it as praise. I've been called worse by sergeants. Indeed, she said, smiling faintly. Her ears flicked once, twice, and he realized that those small gestures had become as readable to him as the controls of his fighter. He had learned her language without words, the subtle cues and expressions that spoke volumes about her thoughts, her feelings, her rare moments of vulnerability. They reached the observation deck, the nebula outside painting everything in shades of pink and purple, and for the first time, Ryan didn't feel like a war prize. He felt like a human being in a galaxy vast beyond comprehension, partnered with someone extraordinary who could match him in intelligence, humor, and heart. Solara's gaze followed the drifting stars. We have survived much, she said quietly, and I suspect we will survive more together. Ryan nodded, letting the words settle. Together, he echoed. He thought about the lessons, the chaos, the laughter, and the improbable bond that had formed. He realized he had changed. Sharper, braver, more attuned not just to survival but to connection, to the joy of the absurd, and to the thrill of being understood in a universe that had once felt cold and indifferent. And as the two stood there, hand in hand, floating slightly in the artificial gravity, watching the colors of the nebula swirl outside, Ryan felt an unfamiliar but welcome certainty. The galaxy was full of surprises, some terrifying, some ridiculous, and some profoundly beautiful. Solara's ears twitched one last time, a silent acknowledgement that she, too, had found something unexpected. And Ryan, with a small, amused smile, realized that the adventure was only just beginning, but he would never face it alone. Humor, courage, partnership, and love had turned a story of conquest into something far richer, a story of trust, laughter, and the unpredictable joys of an interstellar life shared between two unlikely companions. And somewhere deep in the ship's hum, Ryan knew that whatever the galaxy threw at them next, they would meet it side by side, ready to fight, to joke, and to live.